Let me introduce our four-part series by bringing our attention back to our vision and mission statement. All of you can join me in saying that we are the Stone Church with a warm heart, who seeks to be and to make disciples who? Then we put in all the 5 practices that we've been spending the last 5 weeks talking about. The practices of disciples. This 4-part series are going to help us focus on what it means to be and to make disciples. So we're kind of going at it backwards. We looked at all the practices, and now we're going to look at what it means actually to be and to make disciples. That's the context of this 4-part message. Awakening each other to the God who's already there. 3 concepts in that title. Awakening each other to the God who's already there. And we're going to start with the last part first, to the God who's already there. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll talk about awakening, and then in the last week or so, we'll talk about awakening each other. Awakening each other to the God who's already there is based on the following 3 revolutionary notions. The first one being that Jesus is alive and acting in the world, as I talked about with the kids. Jesus is alive and active in the world. That's a revolutionary notion in the church today. The second notion is this: followers of Jesus know Jesus well enough to recognize where he's alive and moving in our day. The third revolutionary notion is it's our job as disciples to nudge each other to wake up to the alive and active Jesus and to the way God is alive and moving in the world today. These 3 notions shouldn't be revolutionary because they're the essence of the Christian faith. So they shouldn't be revolutionary. We should understand them, but they are revolutionary notions for the church of today. Jesus is alive and active in the world. Followers of Jesus know Jesus well enough to know where he is alive and active in the world, and that our job as disciples is to nudge each other to wake up to the alive and active Jesus and to the way God is alive and moving in the world. So let's start with revolutionary notion number 1, that Jesus is alive and active in the world. If you don't believe this, you haven't yet started the first step of discipleship, because it takes knowing that Jesus is alive and active in the world today to want to commit yourself to Jesus, to want to give your life to Jesus. We don't give our lives to dead saviors. We don't give our lives to dead lords. We give our lives to those who are alive and active in the world. The first step of discipleship is taking Jesus seriously. That's where we all start. So I call this step of discipleship the newbie step of discipleship. It's where we begin. We're all new as we come to Christian faith, recognizing that Jesus is alive and active in the world as a result of his death and resurrection. That's where my call to faith started. I couldn't buy that God exists because of my scientific bent. The existence of God couldn't be proved to me in any sort of satisfactory way. The way I came to faith was understanding that Jesus was alive and active in the world. And I could see Jesus alive and active in people that I was associated with. And I could see Jesus alive, changing people's lives. And I eventually said, Jesus is alive and active in the world. Come and change my life. And here, umpteen years later, I took Jesus seriously, and Jesus has changed my life because he's alive and active in the world. Byron Klaus once said, "I believe in the present tense of Jesus." That's the first step of discipleship. Believing in the present tense of Jesus. Not the past tense, not the future tense, but the present tense. Jesus is alive and working today. Leonard Sweet says many Christians are stuck in the Mary Magdalene phase of, they've taken my Lord and I don't know where they've laid him. Many Christians don't have a clue that Jesus is alive and active in the world today. And we don't live as if we're in the present tense of Jesus. I'm here to tell you this morning that because Jesus is alive and active in the world, he wants to become a verb in your life, not a noun. He's alive and at work in you and in our world. He's a resurrection force today. So the question is, do you know Jesus as the risen Savior and Lord who is active in life? Is he a verb in your life? Is he making changes to your life? Have you opened yourself to receive him to do that? Some people talk about the role of the church as keeping alive memories of Jesus doing God's work, as if Jesus was Abraham Lincoln. Where it's the role of history classes and civics classes to keep memories of Abraham Lincoln alive because of what he has meant to our world. If that's all there is to Christianity, keeping alive memories of a dead Jesus who is doing God's work during a 3-year period, if that's all there is to Christianity, keeping alive a dead person's memory, I've got better things to do with my life. That's not the role of the church. The role of the church is to awake each other to the God who's already there. Leonard Sweet, who wrote the book on which this sermon series is based, has a Jewish colleague. Leonard Sweet says in this book, I have a Jewish colleague who he sees as more energized by a Messiah who has not yet appeared than many of us Christians are by a Messiah living in our midst. That's a real condemnation for the Christianity which we live. That there's more energy behind a Messiah who's not yet appeared than one who's living in our midst. It's because we don't believe Jesus is alive and active in our world. Messiah that came 2,000 years ago but doesn't come today is what difference does it make, Messiah? I've got better things to do with my life than be involved in a religion that doesn't believe Jesus is alive and active. The fundamental fact of the Christian faith is this, that Jesus is alive. We sing the song, I serve a risen Savior. How's the rest of that go? He's in the world today, right? I serve a risen Savior. George Straub in 1998 said, too often churches understand themselves to be taking God to a godless world rather than following God into a world in which God is already redemptively present. The present tense of Jesus, where Jesus is perceptible, where Jesus can be experienced by our senses. The great I am of the Old Testament and the New Testament is not the great I was. It's the great I am. We're talking about the present tense of God at work, the present tense of Jesus at work in the world and in our lives today.